Good evening, members in the gallery, staff, councillors, and welcome to tonight, Wednesday, September the 4th, 2024, 6pm Agenda Forum. The City of Swan acknowledges the traditional custodians of this region, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their continuing connection to the land, waters, and community, and we pay our respects to elders, past and present, and their descendants. I'll just read out the disclaimer. The terms and conditions of entry into this meeting are posted at the entry of the public gallery, and members of the public are advised to read them prior to attending this meeting and abide by them. Tonight's attendance and apologies. We have Councillor Jagdeep Singh and Councillor Rochelle Podovnik attending electronically online, and we have all the staff here tonight. Leave of absence from Councillor Oringo, and we have an apology from Councillor McCulloch. I don't have any other apologies from Councillor Catalano, and I think we have everyone else here. And I'll just ask if there's any declarations of financial proximity interest and interest affecting impartiality. If there is, could you please fill out one of the forms in your desk and just hand that up to the CEO. And tonight we have no petitions. We did have, one declaration of financial proximity.
Madam Mayor, I did hand the CEO a declaration.
Oh, thank you very much. So we have one from Councillor Bowman, who declared an impartiality interest in 15.2, Councillor Johnson's revocation motion on the CEO performance review as Deputy Mayor Johnson, referencing him in his reason for his motion. And I also have a impartiality from Councillor Henderson on item 14.2.3. And this is the MRS amendment for Brabham and Dayton, and the reason was he's a member of the Friends of Whiteman Park Committee, the deputation that Mr Harry Grate is giving tonight. Thank you. So tonight we have no petitions, and we have deputations tonight in accordance with the current procedures for public participation. And that is, all requests for in-person deputations were required by 5pm on Tuesday, September the 3rd, 2024. And all written deputations were received by 3pm on Tuesday, February the 3rd, 2024, and they were circulated with the preliminary agenda on Tuesday evening. So tonight we have 14.2.1, which is the Movida Estate acoustic wall, and we have a written deputation that was submitted by Ms B Hanley from the Swanview Community Association, wanting the item to be deferred to the October Ordinary Council meeting. And there is a copy of that attached on the desk there. So then we have 14.2.3, which is the Metropolitan Region Scheme Amendment, Brabham and Dayton Urban Precincts on page 86. And we have in-person deputations from Ms Jan Zek, not in support of the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Good planning is not just about housing or the built environment. It's about timely and orderly provision of decision-making that not only sustains human life, but also protects and cares for the environment. Good planning is about providing a balance between these elements, not favouring one or the other. Unfortunately, and to our cost, planning is failing us within the Swan Urban Growth Corridor. There is a litany of issues: storm and groundwater drainage systems that don't work, rising water tables that are killing trees as they stand, loss of tree canopy reduced to almost non-existence. Sustainable development has been discarded in favour of cheek by jowl, mostly single-storey housing, packed into ever-decreasing lots with no room for gardens, let alone trees. Definitely not transit-orientated development that would see residents being able to walk to services, transport and community facilities. In this development, everyone needs a car. All that is happening is more and more of the environment is being sacrificed for extremely poor planning. 30 years ago, a good planning decision was made. The southern portion of the Caversham airfield was rezoned Parks and Recreation and designated as bush forever. It was noted in 1995 that the Banksia Woodlands was one of the few remnant southern river complexes remaining within the metropolitan region. Along with this, another equally sound decision was made to provide for the ecological linkage from Bush Forever 200 to Whiteman Park. In fact, the amendment stated that the North East Corridor Structure Plan proposes an eastwards extension to the Parks and Recreation Reservation from Whiteman Park to link with remnant vegetation on the old Caversham airfield site. It was only when Drumpellier Drive and the railway line were underway that the two areas became separated. Despite this, Lot 94 still remains Parks and Recreation in the MRS, the highest planning instrument in the pantheon of planning instruments, and the necessity for that linkage has never been more important. Planners and politicians that want to grab this relatively cheap land will tell you that it is degraded farmland and not worth saving, but that is far from the truth. The government back in '95 actively decided it had a role to play in making this linkage, which has been in the MRS for the last 3 decades, to protect the integrity of Bush Forever 200. This decision was made with the full knowledge that the land had been used for grazing animals and was not vegetated like the Bush Forever site, but even so, it was viewed as being of paramount importance. The proposal to rezone Lot 94 and the corresponding length of Lot 600 to urban on the basis that housing can be built close to the railway station is flawed. It doesn't account for the area taken up with drainage, nor does it overcome the lack of transit-orientated development in the remainder of the growth corridor. Nor does it allow for the 12 black cockatoo potential nesting trees within the site, 5 of them constrained by the native vegetation retention area, set aside by the development of the Ellenbrook line. Take a step back and look at how much remnant vegetation and wetlands has been lost in this corridor. There is precious little left, and what is remaining exists in little fragmented pockets. To sacrifice this connection in the full knowledge that all of our ecosystems are under constant and ever-increasing duress is like making one of those shonky loan deals you see on TV. You want to make the purchase and apply every available justification, but you know it will come back to bite you on the backside in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Eyre. I'll ask councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Bowman.
Thanks for that, Jan. Jan, in your opinion, what would be the minimum width for each ecological link that would be needed?
I would say it needs to be as large as possible, because the biggest problem with any bushland is fragmentation, and the minute you have fragmentation, it keeps being eroded around the edges. So I would say you would have to have at least half of the lot, which is what, 5 hectares. But certainly the bigger the better. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any other questions for Ms. Eyre? Thank you very much for your deputation.
Thank you.
Now I have Mr. Harry Gattay, not in support of the officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Harry Gratt. I'm president of Friends of Whiteman Park, and that group strongly supports the objectives of Whiteman Park, and the land in question is part of Whiteman Park. You'll see no Whiteman Park staff here. They work for the proponent. They'd get sacked. You won't see any volunteer groups from Whiteman Park here. Because that would be biting the hand that feeds you. They need cooperation from park management, and they get grant funding. So you won't hear from them, but you'll hear from me. Brabham Stage 3 it needs to be a part of this development, whatever happens there, whether it be conservation corridor or anything. It's got to work with Brabham 3, and congratulations on your decision in getting that sorted. Ecological linkage 32, Swan River, to the airbase, Bush Forever 200, then to Whiteman Park, Bush Forever 304. That has been destroyed by poor planning, and yet it still shows up on your website and the government website as this wonderful connection. It doesn't exist, and it needs reinstating, and that should be part of what's happening with this land. Degraded farmland. Yeah, sure, it's degraded farmland, but that is developer and planner speak, and we hear it all the time, and it has values. It's got cockatoo feed trees there, it's got fauna, it's got plenty of birds on it. The hydrology is a complete fail in Dayton, Brabham and Henley Brook, and if you want to come and have a look, I can show you some absolute disasters. I'm one of the victims, and one of the big effects of the poor hydrology is rising groundwater, and that will very quickly destroy any Banksia woodland. And this site adjoins a TEC, threatened ecological community, which is Bankshire Woodland. The site could be used for a primary school and the ecological link, and that would fit with the objectives of Whiteman Park. Whiteman Park's future depends on funding, which the government's always trying to duck. So this land could be used for compatible projects for Whiteman Park that would show a return. And a good example is Caversham Wildlife Park at Whiteman Park, which shows a substantial return. So selling this land is for a short-term government gain, and it's not appropriate. It's time it stopped selling off parks for the government to make some money. Whiteman Park is predominantly priority one groundwater. So there's only tiny areas of Whiteman Park that can be developed. The majority of the park, you can't put a toilet on it, you can't plant turf, you can't do anything. It's to protect the Gnangara Mound, which is why it was... so don't do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillors, does anyone have any questions for Mr Craddock? Councillor Dawn.
Thanks very much. Could you just expand a little bit more on the hydrology issues, please, Mr Grattan, as far as, because I don't quite understand the science behind that. So can you just expand a bit more on that?
Okay, yeah, hydrology. You always get rising groundwater under urban. And this happened at Ellenbrook 20, 30 years ago, and it was great because it's deep sand up there. And Department of Water Corporation, they could draw more water out of their bores. It was fantastic. It was a win-win. Now, down where on the east side of Dayton, Brabham and Henley Brook, it's all shallow clays. On my tree farm, the clay has a maximum depth of 7 metres. And we have a water table, usually at around 2-ish metres, if you want to average it. Now we've got Dayton there. All groundwater will move downhill, which is not unexpected. And downhill, obviously, is to the river, to the east. And so we're seeing substantial rises in groundwater. And this happens with every urban development. And in those 3 suburbs, the hydrology is a complete fail. Take a drive down Walcott Road. There's houses there with water level, 30 centimetres below the slab. And obviously the council will pay to fix that, but they shouldn't have to. Should have been planned correctly originally.
Councillor Bowman.
Thanks for that, Harry. Harry, same question. What's the minimum width you think there should be for an ecological link?
Well, yes, same answer as Jan. Wider the better. Its edge effects is the problem. Hundreds of metres, if you can get it. You can't always get what you want. So it usually comes down to compromise.
Councillor Dawn.
The ecological link down near Brabham, near Brand Highway on Tonkin Highway, that's about 14 metres across. Would that be enough? And then obviously... No.
Oh, are you talking the overpass?
Yeah, the overpass.
Yeah,
like...
well, obviously when you get to roads and train lines, you can only go over or under. It's too late to go under because of the high water table, and the roads and train lines weren't given elevation in the right locations. So you're going to have to go over, and they're about $9 or $10 million each, I imagine. And same story, wider the better. Let's have one 100 metres wide. Well, the budget won't support that, so let's have one 12 metres wide.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any further questions?
Can I just clarify that? I think that Councillor Dawn may be mixing up the ecological linkage with the wildlife overpass. The two are quite different. Right. Yes. So
Could you then set me straight, please? Because maybe
Yeah,
other councillors are
a-
confused as well.
A wildlife corridor, it's not just for kangaroos to hop along. It's for fauna to have a corridor they can move, and it has to be wide. Different animals move in different ways. Some of the little birds will only go from bush to bush. They won't go over a big open area. They're frightened about getting gobbled up. So that's their nature. And every animal's got its own way. So you have to have a reasonable environment there so that they can travel. and that then gives us genetic diversity. So if we get a small park, let's say it gets burnt out, and there's, I don't know, 10 quendas left, then we've got a small pool, and you've got a little inbred population. So they need to be able to move so that they can share the genetics up and down. And this is also true of plants. If you get a plant species in one little spot and there's, again, we get a fire or whatever happens, there's not many of them there, you get this little inbred population. So you need the opportunity for the genetic material to move back and forward through these corridors, both plant and animal.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, thanks, Harry.
Councillor, is there any further questions? Councillor Henderson.
Harry, thanks for the deputation. In particular, when Drumpelia was proposed, do you recall the issues that were raised by the community at the time about the separation of Whiteman Park and the Bush Forever land through to the east and the loss of trees?
When what was first mooted, Rod?
Drumpelia Drive.
Oh, Drumpelia.
And the rail line,
Yeah.
the separation of the park.
Yeah, well, Friends of Whiteman Park wasn't very active at that time, but we are now. But yeah, they're major disruptors to wildlife and conservation corridors, and the challenge now is to try and sort that mess out. It's back to poor planning and not looking ahead.
Councillors, any further questions? No, thank you very much for that
Thank you.
deputation and those answers there, Mr. Grant. Councillors, I've also received a disclosure of interest from Councillor Deputy Mayor Ian Johnson, item number 14.1.1, the heading is Swan Bush Fire Brigade Local Law and Impartiality. As he's stated, I am a volunteer firefighter, but not at the City of Swan. So thank you for that. I'll hand that back over. Thank everyone very much for coming in. We have 6.3 councillor questions in regard to items on the agenda. Councillors, is there anyone with a question for staff? Councillor Henderson.
So, Madam Mayor, on 14.1.4, starts at page 50, and I want to just preface this by thanking the staff for the amount of work they've done on this. There was a significant amount of discussion prior to it and through the Bushfire Advisory Committee and community groups. One area that concerns me on page 62, at the top of it, is fire break specifications. And it says, e.g. maintain to mineral earth, reticulated lawn or bitumen driveway. My question is, in the first instance, many lawns in the valley area grow without reticulation. So why should it not be cut lawn to, say, 25 millimetres as an example? And a lot of people also have, for instance, a limestone fire break, which isn't actually mineral earth, it's been added as limestone. I don't know if they're the same. So they're the questions. Am I on the right track or am I wrong?
Thank you very much, Councillor Henderson. I will ask through Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We do have in attendance today the Manager Community Safety, Mr. Heath Stenton. So I might let Mr. Stenton answer some of the questions, because Mr. Stenton has been instrumental in managing that project and the review, and I will add if need be further. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everybody. The fire break construction has been one of the key discussion points, and it is the intent of a fire break is for it not to carry fire, essentially. So to do that, the ways that you can achieve that are through it being a mineral earth fire break or green reticulated lawn. The reason that it's stated as being green reticulated, reticulated, is that it really needs to be green all the way through summer, and practically speaking, if you have grass or an area that isn't reticulated through summer, it then will become a flammable, essentially. In relation to the feedback around limestone, I haven't had that feedback before, but certainly if it was a limestone construction, it would pass the construction standard for a fire break.
To clarify, as mineral earth effectively.
Correct.
So, Madam Mayor, I want to come back to the issue of reticulated lawn. There's many properties throughout the valley where the grass grows green all year round and people have to mow it to keep it from getting this high. So the point I'm making is, and I'm trying to get across to the city staff, is that it has to be green grass. I get that. So why wouldn't we say it has to be cut green lawn? In other words, not dead.
Can I ask Mr. Stenton?
It is reasonable to make that change if that's desired. It's essentially, at the end of the day, it needs to be green lawn or reticulated.
And just to make the other aspect of that, to cut it, would you say 25 millimetres would be an acceptable level for a green lawn, or should it be lower? It's hard to cut grass much lower than 25 mil.
Given we're all doing the measurements.
Generally, 10 centimetres is the standard that's required.
10 centimetres is 4 inches. So that's for if it's not completely dead, but maybe partially. So I'm talking about the firebreak area itself. If it's green lawn, should we stipulate that it shouldn't be allowed to get too high?
Under the current ruling, it doesn't actually state the length of the grass. It just says it needs to be reticulated.
Okay, so perhaps I'll work with staff just to work up a number and some actual detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, Councillor Bowman.
Just a couple regarding 14.2.3. From a staff point of view, what would be the minimum width for an ecological link?
For you, Mr. van der Linde.
For you, Madam Mayor, we haven't investigated that at all. Generally, an ecological link should be as wide as possible, but we haven't looked at any of those details on this site. And that is typically something that will be dealt with in a situation like this at the structure plan level stage, the structure plan stage.
14.2.1, just confirming that staff have received the email that got sent, I assume, to all councillors on the 20th of August from Robert Gardner on that matter, and can we get perhaps some response on the issues that were raised in that? Perhaps they'll need to be taken on notice. I've sent the email again to Mr. van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, through you. The summary under consultation in the report, so I just want to find it quickly, addresses that email. Okay. My understanding is that email was sent out directly by the submitter to all councillors, but we have basically summarised the matters that were raised in that. So essentially, the submitter is saying that he's one of the only people that's been living there 300 metres from the Movida wall since the wall's been constructed, since the train's been used in that area, and that in his view, the additional noise that they are experiencing relates to changes that has happened around about December 2022, which relates to, for instance, the closure of Robinson Road crossing. And what he's saying is, since that road crossing has been closed, the trains has the ability to accelerate quicker from that point, and therefore the trains going north travels at a higher speed through the area, and that creates some of the noise. So there are certainly matters in what he's saying that that is logic. And in our acoustic consultants report that was submitted to council last year, it was also identified that the noise experienced by people can be as a result of the frequency of trains and other matters like the weight, whether the train is loaded, whether it's empty, whether it's an old train, whether it's newer carriages and the rest of it. So all those aspects do play a role in how people experience noise.
And my other questions on 14.4.1, is it normal to only have one day, less than 24 hours for a traffic count or a video for a report such as this?
I'm going to pass this one to Mr McLeod, thank you.
Through the Mayor, for a video count, it's normal for it to be undertaken for a single day. It is usually supported by a longer time period count of tube counts, given the time period that was available to staff for the original notice of motion, just the video count was done.
So a follow-up question to that, there was no, on the notice of motion, there was no time limit on the report. Why have staff rush to bring that report back without doing any further modelling on the area and provide the same information?
The response was provided given the ongoing construction of that portion of Henley Brook Avenue and potential changes that may need to occur to the construction.
So the next question is, in the report it talks about there's 670 vehicles and most of them must be doing rat running because there's not that many people that live in the area. The question I asked was about what conclusion, and there is no way to come to that conclusion with any evidence. Is it normal to provide a report that provides no evidence on a issue or a point of view in a report such as this?
I'll take that on notice and look into why that statement was made.
And final question is, can a more detailed traffic survey study be taken to actually find out the real issue and the real numbers of how many vehicles are turning right and how many of those are rat running to areas we don't know where, and how many are actually residents that will be impacted?
Mr McLeod, if that's possible.
Yeah. Through the Mayor, yes, that can be undertaken. The best way of achieving that would actually be through what's called an OD survey, Origin Destination Survey. They can be quite time consuming, but can be done.
Thank you very much. Councillor Howlett, you had a question?
I'll send them through, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dawn.
Thank you. Just in regards to 14.2.3, in regards to the removal of the Bush Forever classification, I've read the agenda, but could you please explain to me in layman's terms the removal of the classification of Bush Forever? Because by its very merit, Bush Forever means Bush Forever. Could you please explain that to me?
Mr van der Len.
Madam Mayor, in the context of this specific application, the Bush Forever classification relates to an area where Icedon Road has been constructed. So it is purely the classification on a map, the cadastre and on the classification in itself doesn't represent what is there. So in this instance, there's no bush in the area that is classified as Bush Forever. It is a road. So therefore, the application is to remove that classification to facilitate the fact that there's an existing road.
Thank you. Being Bush Forever, you could rewild it and actually have plantings, and you could actually purpose it and use it as Bush Forever to actually remain as Bush Forever, though. Do you agree?
Well, it's questions to staff, so it's not actually asking them for their opinion, so you can only ask a question and that's okay? Yeah. Councillor Howlett.
Sorry, I will ask a question. It's just relating to the Movida Estate wall. I'm just would like to know, whatever, page 68. I'm just curious as to why we have elected to put in the report the details of the letter received by Mr. Gardner as part of the report for our decision-making purposes when he's not an expert. He hasn't got, well, from what I can see, he hasn't addressed any qualifications to being an expert in acoustic understandings. I'm sure he has an opinion. That's also fine. But I'm just curious as why staff have elected to include that as part of the report.
Madam Mayor, through you, Council at its meeting on the 10th of July resolved, and I'll read to you Resolution 2D, is so that the application or this item was deferred to the September meeting for Council to be advised of the affected residents' preferred acoustic treatment and for the affected residents to have more time to consider the content of this item in the agenda. So in terms of Council deferred it to get more information from the community. At the time when we prepared the report, the only submission we received from the community was the one that we addressed in the report. And in the report, we identified that we anticipate further submissions to be made through delegations at this forum meeting. So the reason for including that was the submission that was received during the time that Council asked us to wait for that, to give them time to make a submission.
Thank you. I appreciate that it was a submission received and we should know, but you've provided two very abridged paragraphs of what was a very, very lengthy submission. So I'm not sure that, I don't know why we've elected to put in segments of this submission as opposed to just stating a submission was received with a contrary opinion.
Madam Mayor, without going into the detail of the full submission, the submission included a lot of details around things that doesn't relate to the noise aspect itself. It relates to the community and how they operate in that area, which is not relevant to the noise aspect of this application. So what I've done is I've taken out the relevant aspects that addresses the noise and the reasons for the noise that was addressed in that submission. And I didn't address the non-relevant matters.
Thank you very much. Councillors, are any final? Councillor Henderson.
Back to the Bush Forever 200 site. Is the thin area to be rezoned along the western side of the Bush Forever site? Currently it's the fire break for that Bush Forever area. Is that the area, or did I read it wrong, but is that the area where there's proposed to put the 1.6 metre pipe, or is it along Drumpelia?
Through Mr. van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, may I just ask for clarification, which pipe are you talking about? Since I couldn't hear you there. My apologies. Are you referring to the Water Corporation main trunk line?
Well, there's that. That's what I'm talking about. But was it proposed to go along Drumpelia, or is it proposed to go along the slither of Bush Forever land that's proposed to be excised?
Okay. Sorry, Madam Mayor, I understand the question now. So, Watercorp, there's an investigation around the actual alignment of a Watercorp main trunk to run through this area. And if you look at the MRS itself, the intent is, or the investigation is for the water trunk line to possibly go along Drumpelia on its eastern side. That was a possibility. But then they're also investigating it from there. It has to cross to the eastern side of the Urban Grove area and then further south. So my understanding is that for the latest alignment is running on the western side of Drumpelia and then crosses Drumpelia approximately directly across where Harrow Street intersects, and then runs along Harrow Street. So that's the latest iteration of the alignment that's being looked at. So the alignment was not looked at along the Isenden Road.
Okay, so I'm trying to work out why they want to take that piece of land. So if that piece of land is taken away from Bush Forever 200, that thin slither along the eastern side of Issadoon, and rezoned, would it be excised from Bush Forever 200 site? And if so, would the government have to construct another fire break along the western side of the Bush Forever site? Because that's what it is currently. It's a bush fire break.
I think the misunderstanding is that the section of Bush Forever 200 side that is to be removed is not the fire break area. It's the road. It's Isenden Road itself. It's the road. It's the existing road area that needs to be excised. Yeah, and then in the report it states that to the east of this section is the fire break, which separates it from the Bush Forever site further.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up in the drawings, but thank you for the clarification.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, my question is about the same subject, and it's a really simple question. I just want to be certain, through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. van der Linde, that on page 93, that 1.22 hectares of Bush Forever site, number 200, that's the only piece of Bush Forever that is going to be deleted from the Bush Forever classification. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Miles.
This question is just about 15.2, so either to the acting CEO or Valerie. Ms. Hodgins. Could staff outline, I suppose, like the material impacts it would have on the city if the revocation motion was passed, besides just having a delay in the possible CEO performance outcome? What impacts would it have?
Thank you. Through Mr. CEO.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we've clarified this matter, and it's as per the legislation. Basically, if council was to revoke that previous decision, the matter has to go back to the panel, and the panel has to reconvene and re-recommend to council a report for endorsement.
Yeah, but just to follow on that, in that period of, a lack of decision on the CEO's performance, how would that impact either his financial or employment situation or the strategic kind of, work he does? Would that have any, effect?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Essentially wouldn't change his employment status, but the CEO KPIs would be on hold pending endorsement or not by a future council decision.
All right, Councillor, is there any further questions? Councillor Henderson.
On finances, page 147, could I just get confirmation, the gravel pit rehabilitation, is that the council's pit up at Gidgegannup? If you don't have the answer, let me know on email.
Sure, take it on notice.
And the only other one is in respect of item 16.2. I had a discussion with Mr. van der Linde about making this public. I'll consider that during the course of the week, but what I'd like to do is add an amendment to it, something along the lines of, if the grant is not fully approved, that this approval will lapse.
Okay, if you'd like to work with staff and email them, I'm sure they'll get in contact. Through you, Mr. Did you want to comment on that, Mr. van der Linde?
Madam Mayor, I can just say that that's certainly the intent, is that the amount is put on the budget based on the funding being available. If the funding is not available, it wouldn't be acted on.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any final questions? If not, thank you very much. Thank you to those that have stayed tonight in the gallery, to staff and to councillors, and I declare the meeting closed at 6:41. Thank you.